Alright, so today I'm going to replace my spark plugs, not because they're particularly bad. It is because I believe they have cheaper autolight spark plugs in here, and the recommendation for Subaru is to run NGK plugs. So here is the exact part number for my car for the recommended plugs. That is what I'm going to be putting in here. I recently got this car just a little over a year ago. My old 96 Outback got totaled, so I unfortunately had to buy this car last minute. And I've already had issues that I had to deal with, so I'm mainly focusing on making upgrades and making this car better. It had issues straight away when I got it, and I want to start off by getting some good plugs in there. It did have a leak from the water pump from improper parts and improper installation from whoever did it about 30,000 miles ago. And since I didn't have the time or the available space or tools to do it, that was $1,200 out of my pocket to get it done right. And of course, it was an Eisen kit, the only kit you should get besides OEM for your timing belt on your Subaru. So first off, if your hands are not small like mine, you may have to remove the battery. You might find it a little easier to get access to the plugs on this side of the engine. Over here, we'll have to remove the air intake duct to get over on this side. Here's what I'm using to do this. Just a small wrench, an extension, swivel, and 5/8 spark plug adapter socket. It's got a piece of rubber on there, so it'll grip onto the spark plug and it won't fall out that way. And that way, when you go to install it, any plug you stick in there, it'll stay in there. So I'm going to start off removing those plug boots on this side, and then of course I'll work on the other side. Alright, so I removed the cylinder number 3 plug, and here it is. What's interesting is there's oil around the rings there. Something that can occur is that little ring in there is a little rubber gasket, and that keeps the oil. It's basically an oil seal, and if they go bad, that oil spark plug well can fill up with oil. There's no evidence that the spark plug wire there's no evidence of it being oil soaked. It's relatively dry. There is a little bit of an oily residue, but yeah, there's a little bit of oil buildup on these threads, so I'm not sure. Ideally, it'd probably be best just to replace the valve cover gaskets and the O-rings, but I checked these, and since they weren't oil soaked, I wasn't going to replace them. But seeing the oil on the threads, I'm not quite sure how else you could get oil like that on the threads, unless I am having oil consumption issues because I believe I have sticky piston rings. So maybe if there's excess oil getting in the combustion chamber somehow, perhaps. So here's spark plug number 4 from cylinder 4. I didn't like how this one felt removing it. It's never good when you feel more resistance as you're loosening it, so I retightened it and loosened it again because I didn't want it breaking, because that's kind of what it felt like. Alright, so here's the autolight. Here's the brand new NGK. They look pretty similar. You'll notice that the electrode, though, is different. And the gap on this plug here from cylinder 4 looks way out of spec compared to the gap on this one. Yeah, the gap is way off, I can already tell. We can measure it real quick. What's also good about the NGKs is they come pre-gapped, so you don't need to gap them. The spec range is 0.039 to 0.044 for the gap. It's also recommended that you don't re-gap these, because if you can easily damage the iridium tip there on the plug. If you absolutely need to, you can take pliers and bend this top part here. So I got one of these cheap spark plug gap measurement tools from O'Reilly's, as you can see. So like I said, spec should be anywhere from 0.03 to 0.044. So right around in this range. And all the NGK plugs, I already tested them. They are in spec, so they don't need to be changed. So let's look at the cylinder 4 here. See where it goes on the spec here. Yeah, I'd say we are well out of spec there. Looks like it's 0.057. Yeah, that's way too wide of a gap there. Might be why I'm having my surging and acceleration issues. As well, in cold weather, it seems to make a pinging, knocking sound until the engine warms up, but that could also be piston slap. But let's get the NGKs on this side and move on to the next, and then of course when we start the vehicle I'll be anxious to see what improvements we have. I also got terrible fuel economy in this car right now. In the city I'm averaging about 18 miles a gallon, which is severely less than what I was getting in my 96. My 96 would average about 22 to 24 in the city. This thing's 18, so that's horrendous. So hopefully getting these NGK plugs in there with the right specs will hopefully improve the fuel economy. Like I showed, this has a little piece of rubber in there, so I can just carefully put the plug right in there like so. Look at that. It stays in there pretty good. I can just thread this in by hand until it's snug. I usually use a torque wrench when doing this job, but I don't have a torque wrench with me here, so I'm just going to have to do it by feel, which isn't difficult. And the NGK box tells you how to torque these without a torque wrench. You first tighten it by hand like I'm doing right now, and then I believe you turn it a quarter of a turn, and that is all that is needed. So on the box it shows to turn it in by hand first. You turn it 1/16, and then torque it to 2/3 basically. So half a turn and then 2/3. Alright, I got the fourth one in. Cylinder number 4 in off camera. It was kind of a pain to do, and I guess you really don't need to see me wrenching. It's pretty straightforward. You tighten it. For this side we'll have to check out the air duct. Start off by unplugging the MAF sensor. There we go. This has to come out. You can get a pry tool or you just gently pull it on it. Do those clamps. So there's another nut down there at the bottom you'll have to remove. It's also another 10. Should just be able to remove that by hand now. There it is. Actually wasn't rusted at all. Well, unit comes out like that. Careful not to damage your power steering hose. If it's really stiff, you might end up breaking it, and then you have a power steering leak to fix. But now I can easily get to the spark plugs on this side. I usually just like to tuck these up here so they don't fall and get in my way while I'm wrenching. Again, that just does not feel good. Like, it doesn't want to come out. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten it. Yeah, it's a weird feeling. I don't like that. Last thing I want to do is break these spark plugs in the hole. Yeah, it does not feel good. I got that first one out of cylinder 1 again. The threads had some oil on them, some fresh oil too, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Let's get cylinder number 3 out. Might have mixed up that order earlier when I was talking, so I'm on cylinder number 3, the one in front of it is cylinder number 1. And then on the opposite side, driver's side, it's cylinders 2 and 4. Also has some oil on there. Look at that. Fresh oil too. Interesting. Alright, let's get the last two NGKs in there. It just got stiff. This is the one where it gave me issues coming out. There we go. Alright, with that last spark plug in, and hopefully everything's secured properly. Of course, put our little boots back in. There's like no oil on these at all, which is surprising. I guess I shouldn't say at all. There's a little bit of residue. There's a whole bunch of debris in there, so I'm going to empty that out. I can just slide it back in here. So, careful of all the wires and hoses down there. And this little bolt here, stud, goes back in its hole. Here's the nut for it. I'm going to just carefully get it re-secured on there. If you haven't already, this would be a good time to clean your map sensor. Actually, it's easy to get to. You just take those two bolts off, two screws out. You can do that, but I don't need to. Of course, put this bolt back in at the bottom here. This will help hold it in place while you can get the rest of the airbox re-hooked up. This nut that's back here behind the headlight. So that lip obviously goes back in that hole first. Once that's in there, and then line these holes up like so. And just push them on down. That was a nice strong startup. Alright, just got back from the test drive, and yes, putting NGK spark plugs into the Subaru was a huge improvement. Acceleration was smoother, just overall driving felt smoother, more responsive, especially in sport mode. Putting it in the sport mode here felt a lot more responsive. We'll see how it improves through time. I believe with these electronic throttle systems, it kind of has to reprogram itself from the old spark plugs that were in there. You know, if they're not sparking like they should and combustion isn't quite right, the computer system will try to adjust for that. So now that I have the correct spark plugs in there, it might need some readjustment time. I'm curious if a throttle relearn would help that or not. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to let it do its thing. But there was a slight bit of jerkiness on acceleration. When turning though, I had no surging or jerking when accelerating on a turn, which is great. So I may have some kind of a fuel issue as well, like a fuel pump or fuel filter, but that'll be for another time and project for this vehicle. So overall, NGK, it's a huge improvement. That's what's supposed to be in there. So either way, it's a win. So that'll do it for this fix on my car. And I'll see you all next time.